Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello, happy Monday. Sorry to be late.
Yeah, trying a new computer running everything from, and we're just a little bit of a different setup than what we've used in the past. And so, we're trying something new.
Because we know you folks just sit right at your desk at like 8:59. Just say, it's time for the morning show. We know you just camp out waiting for the morning show.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, because we're pretty fun.
Yeah, of course.
But
you're fun.
Yeah. Well, we're fun.
Yeah.
And I was actually talking about fun. When we were kind of setting up some of the new stuff, I was running some different video clips that we use every once in a while. And I ran across the Swahili one.
Oh, yeah.
And just laughed and giggled. It's like, I really should put that in a fast track for a better mood. Because it just makes me laugh super hard. Yeah, it's funny. It's Monday.
Yeah, it feels like a Monday.
It feels like a Monday, but I actually have to admit, this morning I woke up and I was like, "Oh, morning show, it's Friday," and I was like, "Wait a second, it's not Friday. It's very not Friday." So, we good. It was a good weekend. I hope you all had a good weekend. We spent some time, just like the stuff that we do, where we just spend some time planning and not necessarily in work mode, but just doing some brainstorming and working, as we call it, kind of in a way, working on our business and on our life instead of in our life and in our business.
Yeah, I actually did a fair amount of that this weekend. In fact, preparations for upcoming morning shows and some of the other events that are on the horizon. So I spent a good amount of time. I mean, and that's in a way working in the business, of course, but it's like kind of getting ahead of it so that, as we go into our topic for today, which for those tuning in, we're going to talk today about what it looks like to be successful and buy here, pay here in this climate. Okay. So we've got some pretty clear ideas, and especially coming off of the good morning, George.
Good morning, George.
So we've got some really clear ideas. One of the things that happened with me over the weekend is I was able to spend some time and go back and go through some of those sessions from our live stream day.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And we were talking this morning as we were getting ready that we go walking 3 days a week, and because there's just trails right by where we live that are amazing. And so we were talking about, hey, we should use, because we usually just talk, and we were talking about, hey, we should use a couple of those a week to listen to something. Because we kind of like each other. We spend a lot of time with each other. We talk. It's like we never run out of things to say to each other. So, but we were thinking that would be really good to review some of those. And we were talking this morning about that we're walking tomorrow, and Jim goes, okay, so I would really like us to listen to X tomorrow, and because it's something that's coming up that on Wednesday.
So don't miss Wednesday's show. We got Steve Levine coming, and it's kind of on we recorded recently a Tote the Note podcast with Brent Carmichael and Steve Levine on how to underwrite in a way that is both flexible and compliant. So Steve really gives very good information in that broadcast. So he's also going to be live with us on the morning show on Wednesday, and then we're going to release.
And it was just some of the stuff that I've seen from that, because I've seen little like snidbits, is that it's like you can still do a lot of the things and be flexible and all of that, and also stay compliant. So he gives some really good information just from the short things. So that was one of the ones that Jim's like, we should watch that, or we should listen to that tomorrow before we
and I've heard it. I mean, I played it all back over the weekend. It's really great stuff. And Steve is, most people who know Steve knows he's very generous. And I said so in the broadcast, like he's very generous with his time and sharing with dealers how to, stay compliant. And obviously that's the business that he's in, but he's also just very generous with knowledge and information, and genuinely seems to care about dealers in the buy here, pay here space. So please tune in on Wednesday, hear what Steve has to say about that. And then you'll want to catch the the Tote to Note podcast.
Yeah, and good morning, Tyler, too.
Yeah, Tyler Simmons.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that is coming up.
Also Friday, we've already got we got confirmation just this morning that Jimmy Rambo will be able to join us on Friday. So we're going to talk about collateral recovery.
And that's a big deal. If you've got any kind of outside funding, that collateral recovery rate is a big deal.
Yeah, we'll talk about how that is part of this whole thing about success. The difference between the next 3 years in your buy here, pay here business being successful or stressful or worse. Like, it's kind of the way I chose to break it out. It's like,
I like how you said successful, stressful, or worse, because we're seeing some of the worse, and it might not be collateral recovery rate. It might be other things, but there's some,
I made a long list.
There's a little bit of shakeup in a few things. And that actually ties into what we're going to talk about today. Nicely.
And also, having watched the first 4 sessions of that live stream the other day, there's so much rich advice in there from so many great people in the industry. So I'm able to take my own experience and bring in the perspective of those professionals. And I think this morning we're going to give you some very specific things, and this is really mostly my own perspective, like 20 some odd years of doing this, had a dealership that ultimately my own dealership failed. Back in, I was in business through the 2008 thing. So a lot of lessons learned there. I always ask people, when you think about these kind of things is when in successes and failure, and we talk about sometimes failure is a necessary thing to grow and develop and ultimately, have your grander success.
Yeah.
That's not about me so much as it's like, are you smart enough to learn from your mistakes?
Yes.
It's a simple question. Are we smart enough to learn from our mistakes? And if so, then the failures and the mistakes we can learn from, we can get better. For today, we're trying to help you avoid mistakes.
Well, yeah. And I don't have the 20 some odd years of experience, but I pay attention to what's happening on social media and what people are talking about. And there's a level of like discomfort.
Yeah.
And stress, discomfort, and it's like, okay, where there's been some of the big players that have been folding or closing their doors or whatever, and so it's like the first question that comes out is why, because and I from my perspective, it's not about like, I want to gossip or I want to, it's about what did they do that was wrong? Cause I want to kind of put my business through. It's like, what is it that caused that to happen? And so I see when I'm looking at that, and I do see it here in Echo too.
Yeah, sure.
I see when I look at that there's a level of, there's discomfort. It's like, okay, if the big guys, what is it that happened? How can I mitigate that? Because it creates a level of discomfort. And so part of what we were talking about today is Jim was like, breaking it down to, stressful, surviving, or thriving. I mean,
and I think when you bring up the big players, I would let me a couple thoughts here. I think dealers in general in the buy here, pay here space are, they're pretty fearless entrepreneurs. They wouldn't be in that business at all were it not for their willingness to go out and be those mavericks and drive ahead and do that and have that fierce independence, right? That is buy here, pay here. So that's part of who they are. But I can just tell you, as a former dealer myself, current entrepreneur, whatever, it's like the reality is when those dealers are driving down the road in the evening or whatever, coming back from a car auction, have some private time, phone's not ringing, they have their moments where they're concerned about, am I good enough? Am I solid enough to survive whatever's coming here? So in their quiet moments, that's a real thing. And so I'm just saying when we can put aside ego for a minute and we can just say, okay, what do I need to do for the sake of my business? And I'll give you a shortcut. I can tell you what the answer is not to do in terms of if times are going to get tough, right?
Yeah.
You can talk about that. We've talked about that in our own business and you've heard me talk about that in other contexts. One of the things we see sometimes, and listen, I've seen it other businesses,
Yeah.
even family members. Like I've just seen people
Yeah.
dig in and try to say, okay, it's getting difficult. And they think I'm
And
going to
so
work more.
I'm going to sell more. I'm going to buy more. I'm going to sell more. I'm going to work more.
I'm going to sleep less.
And I'm going to dig myself out of this by doing more in my business.
Yeah. And so because, and another thing that came out of our live stream is people acknowledge what you and I talk about a lot. A lot of dealers in our space are sales minded. They come from a sales mentality, sell. And they sometimes think they can outsell a problem. We've covered this some in the past. It's like you feel like sometimes you can outsell a problem, sell your way out of trouble. I don't have any problem. It's not solved through sales, you know? And so, and that's just not true. That's what our experience has been. Doesn't mean it's just most times that's not the answer. So, you know, I think what you'll hear as we kind of go through this list and talk through the pieces is I would say that the most successful dealers are going to be the ones who can make time to work on their business. So, you know, we talk about that some
on our business instead of in our business. And that's been a theme that we have brought up many times since we started this, is that that there really is a difference. And first off is to recognize what activities am I doing that are about me working in my business, and what activities am I doing that I'm working on my business.
Sure.
And, you know, carving out the time. But the working on your business, you can't improve something until you step back and look at the big picture. And that if there's a problem, it requires some objectivity.
Yeah.
And when you're too far into the weeds in your own business, it is really hard to be objective.
I think you might be thinking subject, like
you
also need to be able to, either way, you kind of got to be able to gain some distance. Yeah, words. Yeah.
Y'all know what I was talking about.
Right, yeah. But
sorry, squirrel.
She's embarrassed. So,
no, I was thinking about what we were talking about, but it was like the kids the grandma that got the Amazon package, and she's like, "I just got a package from Amazing."
Amazing. Yeah, that's funny.
I got some words.
Yeah.
Done.
True.
Okay.
So I just think the thing that happens with our buy here, pay here business, and it happens with a lot of businesses, and I can just say, I'm kind of start through a list here of the things that we feel like, and this is not just me. I'm telling you folks, you're going to want to get your hands on that live stream if you missed it.
Oh my gosh, because there's a whole session on
so much.
What are it was on the tiles, it was the KPIs for survivability. And it's like there was a whole session just really on you know, we did capital, we did that, we did
So think about this. I mean, the capital session was, and I look for you haven't been back to digest all that, and you were busy that day. So while you were there,
I was listening, but I wasn't listening because I was paying attention to all the stuff.
Yeah. But I'm just telling you that capital session, we did 75-minute sessions. And there's a session that Brent Carmichael and Jeff Watson moderated with
capital.
All your, Primalin, Spartan, Agora, LHPH Capital, all those folks are there. Stanton Brown was there from First Horizon. And they gave very specific information about how dealers can position themselves to be successful. And you were talking about a wealth of knowledge. And I would say that if we think about what it looks like to be successful in buy here, pay here in the coming years, access to capital is going to be a big one. Now,
and proper structure.
And just, a healthy business, you're not going to be able to access capital if your business is not healthy. So I want to give dealers this morning as clear an understanding about what it means to be successful in certainly in difficult times. There are some who will say, and I tend to agree, not only do dealers have a chance to be successful in this upcoming period, they have a chance to be wildly successful. There's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity as this economy falters. That means there's going to be more people fall into the poor credit segment.
We know that. We know that. So it's, and it's like, okay, so we know that, and it's starting to happen. And so why are the big guys falling?
I think it's a different thing. I think the thing with the big folks, it's a wake-up call for dealers, but I think my experience with the big dealers the big dealer groups, is that they're almost playing a different game. Like they're in a different segment and have a different strategy. So I would say there's a limit to what you can conclude to seeing these big dealer groups falter.
Okay.
But one conclusion we can probably draw, it's typically going to be, in my mind, it's going to be one of two things that put them under. Their leverage. The portfolio didn't perform well enough to stay in favor with their lender. They didn't stay in covenants and ratio with their lender. So that would be potentially one. The other is going to be just losing control of spending and overhead. So the combination of those things, if you don't, because like any business, I always say these portfolios are a lot less risky than the whole overhead side. Like any business, doesn't matter if you and I go open a restaurant, it's like the overhead will be the biggest threat to our business typically. And that's even true in buy here, pay here.
That's true. That's true. And that kind of like was part of what we were discussing this morning over coffee. And so Jim wrote them all down and just, so y'all, we usually have like this thing of notes that we go through when we're, so we know, like, don't forget this, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot today. And so hopefully we can get through, or at least give each of these kind of things enough time to not just skim, but just kind of talk about, it may be another, who knows, it may be a little bit longer than 30 minutes or it may not, who knows. Yeah.
So I think the thing to understand is we got to know our numbers. Okay. So as a dealer, I'm just saying it's going to be really important that you know your numbers. We talk to a ton of people who just don't know which numbers to look at.
That's the thing is it's like we're always saying, know your numbers, what numbers, what numbers are the important things. And that was kind of part of that KPI thing from the all day long event. What are the numbers?
One of the first ones I'd say is join us on Friday, and Jimmy Rambo and I will walk you through. And we're going to invite a couple of dealers to join that as well. But it's like, let's understand collateral recovery rate. If you watch that live stream, you're going to see those lenders explain why this is so important for dealers to understand that, understand what it means to their business.
Yeah.
So if you were going to pick, a couple of numbers, for me, it would be collection efficiency would be one of the things you'd want to monitor on a more routine basis.
There is so much information out there. If you're going like, what's collection efficiency rate? Jim's talked about it. There's so much out there. And
bottom line is dealers, to be successful, you got to know your numbers. You got to know how your business is performing. So that means I got to be able to take some time away from buying cars and being out there, making the approval decisions and all the stuff that is being a dealer. When we find ourselves managing the business and not
managing you,
we got to be able to take our manager hat off and put our owner hat on, and we got to go sit down at our desk and close our door.
There's a lot of dealers that we've talked to that it's like, oh, I hate that. Or we'll hear, when we come and we do a discovery visit and we get to know, I talk to a lot of the team members and I've heard too from other the team members it's like, oh, they hate that. They hate doing that thing. And so, sometimes I'll hop in and I'll help, or, just different things that are about like really keeping track of what's happening with their performance, their financials, that kind of stuff.
And I think, I can understand.
It's important.
It's going to be super critical. It's always
involved in that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always essential. I'm just saying, if we recognize that we're heading into some shaky economic times, then it's going to be the difference between survival for a lot of these dealers. I'm just going to be as clear as I possibly can. I think that if you want to be confident that you're going to survive this difficult stretch and thrive because of all the opportunity, it's going to be access to capital, which means I got to know my numbers. That means performance numbers. That means at least monthly numbers. And we would be recommending some weeklies. Like we show up at a lot of dealerships where they don't really track any kind of monthly performance. And so I think we have to know how our assets are performing. Okay. That's one. And so some of the other numbers would be financial. So if I'm going to give you
your
two,
accounting?
Know your collateral recovery rate, track your changes in equity.
Okay.
Like if you just want to keep it simple, keep an eye on that balance sheet, look at changes in equity. Okay. Make sure because that's the quickest indication of your profitability. When you're profitable in a given month, your equity is going to go up. Right. And so you should see that, watch that number. And if you see that number shrinking, get on the phone and call Amanda Sanchez or call us or call somebody and figure out what's going on and how do I solve that? Okay. Fix it. Don't just say, I can solve that by buying more cars. It's like, or sleeping less. That's the thing that we're trying to emphasize is
that's
that
exactly
really for dealers to be successful going forward is going to be really important to, know their customers too. That was another thing that came up in our live stream. We talk about that a lot.
And that's, it's like, what I found I really enjoyed here is that you were like, know your numbers, know your customers. And that's kind of like the titles for a lot of the stuff for Dealer Track, but
the BHPH Institute.
Yeah. And so, so knowing your customer is, that's,
well, think about it.
And keeping a connection to your customer too, but it's about knowing who they are. And
it's always true. And I think what we've talked about in the past that, it's true in any business that, and part of marketing, we sometimes talk about marketing as advertising and selling. Another part of marketing is surveying and verifying that you're scratching the itch that the customer has. So it's like, we got to know this customer. We got to know what their needs are, which is going to help us on both the sales side, marketing side, and collections. We got to get to know our customers and be sure we can connect with them.
Yeah, I would ask, dealers out there that might have hit like there's a squeeze on their business, and how, if you have a good relationship with your customer, you can lean into that and really drive fixing that is leaning into knowing your customer and that relationships that you've been building. And it's like, it's time to kind of step in and when you know your customer, that can
and I can also say that one of the things about our business, this came up in a recent conversation, but it's like one of the other things in buy here, pay here is that it's been said many times. I didn't invent it, the expression. It's like, in our business, it's not so much about how many cars we sell, it's how many accounts we keep sold. Okay. So that has a lot to do with, I think with Tommy, we probably can't talk about that.
Yes.
It's like because as economy gets tough, you're going to see people struggle, and how do we keep them? How do we manage that?
And that's, that knowing your customers, there are two dealers I can think of that we know very well that really shine in that. One is Gordy Tormullen. Gordy hasn't spent a dime in advertising, and I can't tell you how long, but because he keeps a really good pulse on his customer. He knows his customer. And so most of everybody that comes into the dealership are repeats or referrals. And that's that, keeping a customer. It's not I sold a lot of cars. It's like, how do you retain a customer? How do you keep that going? And the other one is Tommy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I see, like, when I talked about leaning in, Tommy's been doing a lot of leaning in with his customers, and it's like the what he created earlier is paying off. I mean, it starts to pay off where it's like we're leaning into that. Yeah.
It's about establishing a relationship. Like we have a different customer interaction. It's not, if you and I went and opened a store that sold cookies, you would have some relationship with your customers, and yes, you would want to earn them coming back. But in that scenario, you have to sell the customer again and again that's the kind of customer relationship, a new sale, a new transaction. In our case, we have a single transaction that we hope is going to last, 4 years, right?
Yes.
And so that just means we got to be prepared to maintain that relationship. So that's part of the other thing that I think about when I see the big operations, these scaled operations failing. That's another thing that happens in scale is it's very difficult to maintain that level of relationship with the customer.
Community.
And so when times are hard and the customer's struggling, it just stands to reason that more of them are going to fail. We're seeing numbers say the delinquency numbers are coming up. That suggests charge-offs are coming. That means dealers are going to have repos on their back line that they got to. So we'd like to have fewer repos. That's always our strategy in collections. That's always why, the customer focus on sales and collections. But the other thing I would ask dealers to think about is we all know that our business has a better chance to be successful when it's efficient. Like that's not new to you. But I would say if you're a dealer, one of the things we would be urging, our clients to do, and they've seen us do, and that we would urge anybody out there to go look at your business, take some time away and analyze your business. And that would be like part of the analysis would be what we call a gap analysis. Like it's or what is called a gap
strengths,
analysis.
Weaknesses, threats, and opportunity.
That's different. Like
no,
the gap is identifying those things that are missing. Okay.
Yes.
So again, all this stuff ties back to, it ties back to this thing about being able to identify the stuff, take a break, see the thing for what it is, and be able to analyze those things. Because when I think about the capital, we all know in buy here, pay here, capital is going to be key. So it's either getting access to capital or getting your business healthy enough that it qualifies for a more affordable bucket of money. It's going to be those kind of things. So this is going to be the key to what I think separates the winners and losers in the coming years.
Yeah. So, and it's like, it obviously means, it's super important, that capital piece. Cause I mean, it's the capital, it's the customer. It's that those are like the two first things. It's like knowing your numbers and understanding the capital piece and all of that, knowing your customer. And then there's the third thing on here. I was like, Jim and I talk an awful lot about flow, and that, we were chatting about that this morning, the flow of your business. And, we were talking about the pinch points too. It's like watching how things flow from acquisition to on the lot to contracted to from handoff, from contracting to collections to the collection process to bringing them back in for their next of that. It's like paying attention to how those things flow. Because it's all of those things are part of the life cycle of a customer.
Right.
And if there are parts of that there's a constriction, or parts of that there's a miscommunication, or parts of that where there's miscommunication, lack of communication, that can create just like those bottlenecks and those problems, which can compound pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I think the flow piece that came to mind for me is, because let me just ask, if I got a dealer listening, let me just ask a dealer. If you heard of a dealership that was really efficient in managing their leads, they were very consistent and efficient in creating leads, closing them, success in collections, and success in their capital side of their business, their funding. Do we think that business is going to be successful? I do. If you've got the ability, because as one of the ways I'm thinking about it is, if you have breakdown, if you have great lead flow, but you don't have the capital to fund them, that's a problem.
That's a bottleneck.
If you got plenty of capital, but you don't have enough leads, that doesn't work. So it's like finding that balance of sales and inventory. Inventory's got to be, we all know the struggles with inventory, but when we get efficient, lead flow, inventory, capital, we can grow. We're going to be efficient and successful. So one of the other things we talked about that came up also in the live stream is the word being adaptive. Okay. So that also to me has to do with how can you adapt if you don't know what's going on with your customers in the market. You got to be receptive. You got to be attentive.
And adaptive. And part of that adaptive piece of that is learning how to better utilize your DMS, because that can be such a, if you're paying for it already, it's like, know how to use the tool and let go of, it's like lean into, there are some things that can really help you. But it's also, there are tools and ways of operating that are out there that can, they might have an expense on the front end, but they will save you on the back end, or they'll bring more of something in. So like if your bottleneck is I just can't get enough people through the door, well, then that might be a marketing thing. And so, it's like what kind of things are out there that can help with that. And so to me, I kind of look at as adaptive too, as lean into the things that are out there that can help. And a lot of times the best way to educate yourself about what are the things that are out there are conferences, are 20 groups, are I think you wrote down
online
discussions like podcasts or online courses.
I mean, we have our online stuff. Yeah, it's like wherever you can go to get online education. Like if you can't travel, you can't justify the trip or whatever, then we get that. But that whole thing about, it's the phrasing, I never have loved it, but it's like they say that training doesn't cost, it pays. It's an investment. And if we're not prepared to make that investment in ourselves, then we have to be prepared to pay a price for that. So we got to educate ourselves. We got to get out there and learn the stuff. And so I think there are folks out there who are willing to help. I mean, gosh, that live stream day, just so many experts, really, dozens of people who showed up and gave really great information.
And it's stuff. That's one of the things that I love about, I mean, obviously I better love what we're doing. Right. But that I really, really love about what we're doing is that, not only is this something where we are having a great time creating something that we're bringing conference level education. And in some ways it's like, it's different too, even from that, because of being nimble, that we can be really, really nimble in doing online education. But the other part of that is that when it's done like that, I talked to so many dealers. It's like you go to a conference and you have notes because there's so much richness and there's so much stuff. And so you've got your book of notes, and then you go to the next conference and it's like, crap, I only did like an eighth of all of the stuff, because, you get busy and all of that. Where when you have the opportunity to be able to review like in real time and be able to put those notes with, again, it's like I'm watching the thing again, and kind of like it's a refresher, renewal. I think that is really, at least for me, that's helpful for learning, for growing, for shifting, that being able to really rewatch. And we do that ourselves though, Jim, because we're actually there when things are being recorded, and then we'll listen to it later and it's like, oh my gosh, I missed that. That was and that there's something else there that it's kind of like reading a really great book, and every time you read it you get something different and you get something new. And so I really appreciate
everybody learns
online
differently.
Education too.
Like how you might absorb information be different for me, but I think the bigger part is how do you then implement it, which is a whole different episode. We've touched on some of that stuff in the past, but we don't need to get into all that. It's like you got to go learn it, and then you got to figure out how to implement it. Got to have a plan for implementing it, right out of the gate. And so the other things that I had noted here was just this idea that capital access is going to be such an important piece
for the next.
And so you can name to me, if you're a dealer listening to me, you're going to name off to me the reasons that what Michelle and I are asking you to do is difficult. You're going to say, I can't do this part. I can't do this part. And I'm going to ask you how much of what you're telling me is a limitation could be solved with capital. If you had the funding to, how many of the problems that you might describe to me in your operation could be solved with proper funding? So if the answer is, a high number of them, then again, if your business is investable, fundable, that's what our event was largely about. How do we get our business to be positioned well where it has the opportunity to scale, has the opportunity to perform well when we're not there, has the opportunity to allow us to move toward a transition toward retirement or whatever, and have the business still perform. And all of those things that you would do in that regard are going to help with access to capital. So it doesn't matter if it's private investment capital, if it's a lender, there's going to be any number of ways to get there. But first got to identify what are the bottlenecks, what are my current limitations, how would I solve that? And money would probably solve a lot of the things you would have on your list.
And you can find those bottlenecks, knowing your numbers, knowing your flow, all that kind of stuff. I want to ask you just real quick is, I think we kind of talked about this a few months back, that there's a difference between, and a lot of this is about the structure of the capital, but there's a real big difference between personal debt and business debt. And there's a lot of like, I don't like there's a lot of people out there that don't like personal debt. it's a different thing. I mean, and to see business debt through the same lens as personal debt, they're very different things. But even in the business debt, there's positive business debt and there's negative business debt.
Yeah.
And so
Well, and debt's not the only way to do this. You
Yeah.
can also fund it through equity, but you're going to have to
Yeah.
find the experts who can help you. And we got a deal pending right now where we helped a dealer, connect with and we had the meetings and we met with a would-be investor, and the documents are being drawn up. This private investor is going to invest in this dealership's business. So it's an equity arrangement or debt, whatever is decided in the end. But there are ways to introduce capital. And so I'm just saying, you can't get there if all you're going to do is show up every day and work harder to sell more cars. You're never going to get to the place. You got to be able to get away, get a desk at home, whatever that looks like, set up an office in your car, whatever has to happen to get you away from the business, so you can step back and figure out, okay, what needs to happen.
Picture.
Yeah, I got to be able to work on the big picture. I got to be able to get myself positioned to make sure that my business is in a good place to perform well, even when times get rocky. Yeah. And so to me, that's really customer connection, making sure we're in touch, with what's going on with the customers. Yeah. Know the numbers. Got to make sure we know how the business is performing. And that's
step back far enough to be able to say, where are my bottlenecks? Where are the things that are holding me back? And
then when we get efficient in those areas, and it's an ongoing thing with a business. Like, you don't just fix it once and it's solved. Like but you verify that the things that you've installed are creating those efficiencies you're looking for. And now you've got a chance to, one, qualify for capital, two, improve your position and maybe qualify for better capital. We've worked with a lot of dealerships over the years that have multiple sources, multiple buckets of money, and it could be private equity or whatever. I mean, maybe not private equity like outside equity group, more like friends and family sort of thing could work well. But it's like, just there is an opportunity. We are going to see lots of opportunity in Buy Here, Pay Here. We just know that, and our lenders told us on the day of the live stream, they told us, here's what would keep a dealer from being fundable.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's important for us to utilize that information. And last thing I would just say, and this is kind of a White Hat Wednesday thing on a Monday, but I would just say, one of the other pieces, and we don't have to go too deep into this today, is, when you go back and you take some time away from your business and you think about this whole planning thing, is incorporate the heart into your thought process. We're up here in our head a lot of times thinking about our business and fixing the stuff. And I'm saying, try to bring your heart to your business, because it's going to affect this relationship with the customer. It's going to affect the relationship with your employees. It's going to affect your ability to execute on the long range plan. When your heart's in it, your success rate is much higher. That's an intangible thing that's hard to you can't put that with your lender. You can't put on your application, I lead my business with heart. It's not going to help with your application, but I'm saying it's going to permeate parts of your business in a way that it's not going to hurt you. I can promise you, you start putting your heart in your business, it cannot hurt. So you take no step backwards.
Yeah. White Hat Way. If you don't know what it is, you can go to the Buy Here, Pay Here Institute, and there's a whole page on it about what that the foundation pieces of that is.
That's part of it. Yeah.
And
we can probably wrap up there. I think that's, we've covered all the pieces that I had written. I mean, the thing about being
I didn't bring my glasses, so I'm like,
she's struggling to read the stuff I wrote. But I think
so
that's good.
Numbers, heart, customer flow, and just like overall arching theme, is take the time to step back out of your business and look at your business and work on your business instead of being in it all the time. And that goes for businesses that are family run, and it's just like mom's doing this, kids doing this, dad's doing this. It's like it's important to step away from that and really look at it.
And one other thing is the whole thing about multi-locations versus single locations. You're gonna have to go to the live stream and listen to all the people talk about that very thing. Like, so as you think about growth, some of that, sometimes that's scale in terms of multiple locations, and sometimes it's just optimizing the location that you have. And so again, things you can learn in that.
Oh, absolutely. And then we great topic.
Wrap up, make sure people know we got Steve Levine on Wednesday.
Steve Levine on Wednesday.
Got Jimmy Rambo on Friday.
Jimmy Rando on Friday. And
BHPH United starts on Sunday.
There's so much stuff. Jeez.
And then Neo,
and then Neo on Wednesday. And then on Friday we have Jeff Martin joining us.
So to be clear, Neo's a week from Wednesday, May 3rd. So let's just
not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. Yeah. We have Jeff Martin joining us, and he's going to do the NIAD update. Yeah. And
that's the first Friday.
Really, really looking forward to. Yeah. Not just the fact that he's the new executive director of NIADA, but we really do like the guy. Yeah. And we've had a chance to kind of get to know him through TIADA and through some other things that we've had some great conversations with Jeff. And so really, really great guy.
Sure. Good leadership. So excited to have
really
him
looking forward to that.
Come to the show.
All right.
We should jump off.
I think it is about time. Happy Monday. Enjoy your week, everyone. I hope you had a good day off yesterday at least. And we will catch you all on Wednesday. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks.